Hello, book burners, and welcome to another episode of Books Are Burning. I'm Mark Will, author, songwriter, and publisher in permanent exile, currently based on the island of Taiwan, and I'm joined once again by G.J. Villa. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, we're continuing with the Rejoyce series of podcasts. The Houston Joyce Society is rereading James Joyce's Ulysses. We've done 3 episodes so far. That would be, help me here, episode 1, Telemachus, episode 2, Nestor, and episode 3, Proteus. Those 3 episodes comprise the so-called Telemachia, focusing mostly on Stephen Dedalus, who is associated with Telemachus of the Odyssey. And today we start episode 4, where we are introduced to our Odysseus character, Leopold Bloom, the Jewish-Irish hero of this mock epic or mock heroic epic. So what's this episode called? Calypso. Yeah, we'll get into that. But how was your reading experience with Calypso generally?
It's one of my favorite episodes. I remember the first time I read it. We'll look at the opening paragraph because it's so delightful, but it's warm, it's inviting. You're introduced to the extraordinary everyman in all of his multifaceted nature and the interesting relationship with Molly, who is at once Calypso as well as Penelope. We'll talk about that. And it's sort of a bright opening after the sort of enclosed cerebralness of Stephen. We left him at the Proteus episode, and we already talked at length about how trapped in his mind he is, anguished, overly intellectual, etc. So for me, the experience of 4, Calypso, with the introduction of the actual epic hero, right, is just a delight.
Bright is a key word. The color associated with this episode is orange.
Right.
Hence my orange attire.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right, well, let's get into it. Let me pull up the slideshow for those watching. Can you see that?
Yes. Rejoyce, the Houston Joyce Society,
right.
Rereads Ulysses. And as a reminder, that was when we both lived in Houston almost 3 decades ago. I think we read Joyce together the first time 28 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So now...
sounds about right.
Far-flung parts of the globe, we're doing it again.
Yep. Well, on this slide, I've been featuring portraits of Joyce by the great Brian Whelan, a painter that we are acquainted with and who licensed some of his images to us for use in our ongoing series of novelettes, Aaronesque. But today we just have a photograph of a middle-aged James Joyce. Where do you think that was taken? He's in Europe somewhere in exile?
Probably, if he's middle-aged, probably in Paris.
Okay, well, we would like to welcome a new member to the Houston Joyce Society. I received this in the mail today, or actually I received it as a text message. A listener says, I'm all in on reading Ulysses and following along with your Books Are Burning discussions. I started Monday and am caught up to where you and GJ left off on your discussions. End of episode 3. Looking forward to reading the beginning of the Bloom episodes. So look at that, man. We made a convert.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Welcome to Brother John. So just a reminder, these are the texts that we're using. GJ Villa is using the Double J Random House, and I'm using the Modern Library edition. I've removed the paperback because I'm not even referring to that anymore. So all page number references are either from the Random House in the case of Villa's notes, or the Modern Library edition in the case of my notes. And I thought we would quickly talk about our reading methodology. Some people might be interested in this. It came up earlier this week. You said your current reading pattern is?
Yeah, it's sort of changed, between a couple of chapters, but then I sort of settled into this for the last few episodes. I've read a few ahead here. I'll read there's a ulyssesguide.com that I can't over recommend. It gives great episode summaries. A first time reader may not want to do that first, right? You might want to first read the episode and then use a summary if you want. As someone who's already read it and has revisited some of these episodes a few times, right? But this is my first full second rereading. This works for me to get a quick online summary. And then I enjoy reading the episode while listening to the audiobook version, right? Then I'll go back after that and review some of the Gifford annotations, the encyclopedic Gifford, picking and choosing the ones that I want to look into as I re-examine the episodes and I think about it a little bit more and compile the notes.
Yeah, and so I said my method is to consult the Gilbert-Lenati schema, which we'll get to in a moment. Then I read the episode 2 or 3 times with pen in hand, and I underline and double underline. And then I compile my notes in a Word document and discuss with HJS, either through text messaging and or the podcast like we're doing now. So this discussion that we're having is part of the process for me. I don't really consider myself to have completed reading the episode until we have our, discussion and break it all down.
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned before that I really do think this book is best read with others, even if it's one other person, if it's more, fantastic, because it is about returning again and again, and if you can share your impressions, all the better. I also consult the Gilbert schema, which is my bookmark, so that's very handy. If you are reading or thinking of reading, use that for sure, right? It's very easy to find that, and that's a good way to think about the episodes in the way that they were architecturally designed, right, as you read them.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm using what's called the Gilbert-Lenati schema because he sent different versions of the schema to various people. And so the Gilbert-Lenati schema combines the schemata he sent to Stuart Gilbert and Mr. Lenati. I can't remember his Christian name, but anyway, it's a mashup of those, so it's more detailed, as we'll see in a moment. But just a reminder, we're starting what's called the Odyssey portion of the book, and this is the longest. I think they're 12 episodes? Yeah, 4 through 15. And it's sometimes called the Ulysses section, I guess. But anyway, our Ulysses character, Leopold Bloom, is the focus. And just as with the Telemachia, the section started with a big S the size of an entire page. This portion of the novel begins with a big M the size of an entire page, and we'll talk about the significance of that. So Telemachia begins with S, which we said stands for Stephen, sinner, saint, sullen, and a few other things. Today we want to ask ourselves, what is the M? Why M for Leopold Bloom? I've got some thoughts on that, but maybe we can discuss in a moment. So, yeah, we're starting episode 4. It's called the Calypso episode, and pictured here in the slideshow is, do you know who that is?
I'm not sure. Who is that? Is that Halle Berry? No.
Not Halle Berry. It's the former Miss America, Vanessa Williams.
Vanessa Williams. That's right. Vanessa Williams. I see that now.
So she played Calypso in the TV miniseries of the Odyssey. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's pretty good. It's actually a Francis Ford Coppola production. He may have directed it too, but you've got Armand Assante as Odysseus.
I have seen a good bit of that. That's right. That's right.
So anyway, the very sultry and sexy Vanessa Williams is Calypso. The nymph, I guess you could say. So
this corresponds in the Odyssey, just to give a quick sort of overview of that, when we in book 5 of the Odyssey, after the first 4 books, which cover Telemachus' journey, right? Book 5, we finally meet the epic hero, and he is stranded on a.k.a. Calypso's bewitching isle. A.k.a. is also sort of the navel of the universe, the center of the universe, right? And he's in a kind of timeless, the Omphalos, exactly, which we've talked a little bit about. And he's living in this kind of timeless, he's been there, I believe, 7 years, right? He has sex with with Calypso, right? Every evening and so on. But by day, he looks out to the sea and he weeps for home. So he's longing for home. By the end of the episode, Hermes comes down and tells Calypso that she has to release him, right? And he does. Then he leaves and goes and has his other adventures. But so when we first meet Odysseus, he is stranded with this bewitching nymph in this a kind of paradise, right? A kind of primal paradise. It's described as this place outside of history.
You're really on top of these Odyssey details. I'm thankful for that because it's been a while since I've
been taught it a while, but I've taught it enough times in my life that it stays with me.
Yeah.
So
I'm more of an Iliad guy myself, but yeah, it's
they're both great.
Great text.
Yeah.
All right. So, we'll talk about why Penelope is also Calypso, is also Molly Bloom, as we look at the aforementioned Gilbert Lenati schema. I'll let you read it this time. Where is this taking place?
It's taking place in the Bloom house on Eccles Street, right? It's 8:00 in the morning, right? So it's beginning at the same time that episode 1 begins. That's important, right? We have this thing called parallax later, where things will be happening simultaneously to the two characters, right? So we're meant to think about how what's happening to our hero, what already happened with Stephen as he was in the tower with Buck Mulligan and everything else, right? Kidneys is the organ. The art is economics and mythology. I wasn't aware of the mythology. That must be from the Lenati.
That's Lenati.
Interesting. I can see that now, though. Orange is the color. Though there's, as you mentioned, a lot of brightness, right? The symbol is nymph, exile, family, Israel, and vagina. So take that as you will, dear listener. The narrative is mature. Unlike the first narrative, Stephen's narrative was called what?
Young,
right? So we have mature here, right? Stephen was the young man, and now we have a mature perspective. Mr. Bloom is Ulysses, of course. Molly Bloom, interestingly, is both Penelope and Calypso. Penelope, of course, is the loyal bride of Ulysses who staves off the suitors and remains faithful to him until he comes home, and we've already talked about Calypso. The nymph, which is a picture on the wall, a picture of a nymph in their living room, or in their bedroom, above the bed, is Calypso. Zion is Ithaca, and Glugats, the pork butcher, is the Recall. I wasn't aware of that, but that's interesting.
That's also
that's from the
Lenati. Actually, I think that is from the Gilbert that you sent me a photograph of. So what do you think that means? It's not even clear what the recall is. It's the recall of Odysseus to Ithaca, like the nostalgia, which is summoning him home.
Perhaps because, interestingly, Glukats is also of a Hungarian Jewish background.
That's
like
what I was
Leopold,
thinking. Yeah.
Right? So they're both Jews. They're both outsiders in an Irish Catholic world, right? They're both unkosher Jews. I think that's important. They are far from Orthodox, right? They're secular. So I suppose, I hadn't thought about this. I don't know where the recall, but the recall may be a sort of recall to one's kinship, one's origins, something like that, perhaps.
Well, if Zion is Ithaca, it's like a reminder to return home.
And there are these images of Zion, as we'll say, the idea of a lost promised land, right, that he longs for. But Bloom is savvy enough to take it also with a grain of salt, right, as we'll see.
Yeah, well, as I said in our first episode, I'm particularly curious this time around as I'm reading it for the 4th or 5th time. I'm curious about how Bloom, the character, and more generally Joyce, the author, relates to this concept of Zionism, which, is so much a part of our world today.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, there is the house that you mentioned, 7 Eccles Street. I remember when I first read this, I thought it was Eccles Street, but some Irish folk that I met in Korea corrected me. They're like, what are you talking about? It's Eccles Street. Okay. So number 7 Eccles Street, it was an actual place. What you see pictured here in the slideshow is the front door that was removed before some construction or remodeling was done to the James Joyce Museum. So we've actually seen this door in the picture. There's no knocker, but I understand the knocker has been restored. So that's interesting. All right, here are our characters. There are more actual people in this episode than are pictured here, but these are the 3 main ones. We've got Leopold Bloom, and what you see in the slide is a sketch that Joyce did of his character as he was conceiving of him, I guess, early on. So there's a mustachioed figure with a hat. And we've also got Molly, or Marion Bloom, the Penelope character, in her bed. This is a still from the Joseph Strick film we mentioned before. And above her is the Pussy, the cat.
Pussins.
Yeah.
The nameless, or I like to Pussins. Pussins the cat.
Yeah.
We call him. Milk for the Pussins.
Yeah. So
it's so interestingly, Bloom wears a bowler hat, and we've talked about Stephen's Latin Quarter hat, his pretentious poet's hat. So that's certainly deliberate on Joyce's part, right? The contrasting hats.
Yeah.
Speaking of drawing attention to itself.
Speaking of hats, I forgot to call your attention to my cap with the prominently displayed M for obvious reasons, but we'll talk about what that M might mean in this Odyssey section of the novel, which, as we said, starts with that, M, which is as big as an entire page. All right, so what else do we have? Yeah, a brief plot summary. So I've just screenshotted our conversation. I said, finished reading Cucklypso. That's my name for this episode. In true Joycean fashion, I've used a bit of paranomasia to describe our focus today. And I said, somewhat facetiously, plot summary: Bloom makes breakfast, goes shopping, takes a shit. And you said?
I said, well, he first feeds his cat and he almost burns the kidney.
And I said, okay, sure. He also waits on Molly, checks the mail. And I said, I was being reductive there. You said that was clear, but it's true, as we discussed, that on the surface, nothing really happens, at least by the traditional narrative standards. So, as we've said before, this book is a celebration of the quotidian. It is an epic, but it's an epic of the everyday.
And it's a beautiful assertion of the mythic foundation of the quotidian, right? That beneath the seeming chaos and triviality and so on, impressions, encounters, right? There's a mythic structure that resonates and imbues life with beauty and meaning.
Yeah. And I added, the so-called next door girl knows how to whack the washing and has a nice ass. That's an important part of this episode.
Indeed.
Bloom rips a text like Stephen did. Remember Stephen in episode 3, Proteus? He tore the bottom half of Daisy's letter so he could write something on it. And like Stephen, Bloom imagines he too could be a writer of sorts. And you said,
what did I say? I mean, he where is that bit about what
it's in the middle here, but he's not dead set on the idea the way Stephen is.
Okay, I see where we are. Right. He's not. Yeah, Bloom, when he imagines being a writer, he thinks in pragmatic terms, right? In terms of selling a fiction to the newspaper, right, and making some money off of it.
Yeah.
Stephen is the
artist.
Yeah, the Byronic hero, or he certainly sees himself as the Byronic hero. And in many ways, sort of the suffering artist, right? The failed artist, all those things.
Yeah. And so I agreed, no, he's more interested in the money he could make, and he would share the credit with his wife. He imagined submitting an anecdote to this magazine called Titbits, apparently. Nice name,
Right.
that. And it would be written by Mr. and Mrs. Leopold Bloom or something of that sort. And you said pragmatic Poldy being the nickname that Molly has given her husband Leopold.
And that's significant, I think, right?
Only
she calls him Poldy, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that as well, their relationship.
And so finally,
and then we started talking in a way that some readers might think, oh, these are just a couple of middle-aged misogynists. But no, I don't think that's the case. We said then afterwards.
I imagine Molly as a fat-bottomed girl. She shakes the bedpost when she turns. That's mentioned at least twice.
She's a thick one, I said.
Lay, lady, lay across my big brass bed. Yeah, I said total diva with big bubs, and bubs is not my word, it's Joyce's.
That's Joyce's word. And I said, like Nora, right? Joyce liked them thick.
He liked them thick. Yeah,
there we are.
Some
right?
people do. Some people do. So all of that
he liked the curves and the heft on women. It's just a fact, right? And Molly is the earth goddess, among many, many other things, right? So we will see how this all pans out. Joyce's unique sexuality and depictions.
All right, so we start with your notes. I'll just warn you in advance that I tried to organize mine according to theme and or topic. So I hope we can go through them more quickly. But
yeah, I'm going to try to go.
I'll let you just start wherever you want.
Yeah. I'll just start. Got to read the opening paragraph because we begin with Bloom, who is the embodied man, right? I remember the first time I read this, I was just delighted. Mr. Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls. He liked thick giblet soup, nutty gizzards, a stuffed roast heart, liver slices fried with crust crumbs, fried hen cods roes. Most of all, he liked grilled mutton kidneys, which gave to his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine. What a fantastic opening. So the first couple of pages, you're with Bloom. That's the introduction. He relishes life, food, ingestion. He takes in the world literally and metaphorically. He's decidedly unkosher, right? Eating the inner beasts of organs, right? So he is not a religious Jew. That's the wonderful introduction. Then later on the page, he is very, very kind to a little kitty cat, which for this cat owner's heart gives him a lot of credit. Milk for the pussins. McNow, the cat cried. And then he reflects on the cat, right? They understand way better than they understand what we say way better than we understand them. She understands all she wants to, vindictive too. Wonder what I look like to her. Height of a tower? No, she can jump me. He's thinking about the nature of animal intelligence and feline intelligence, and specifically feminine feline intelligence, and this image of the cat as the fickle mistress, the one in charge. Cruel her nature. Curious mice never squeal. Seems to like it. So those are also qualities that are associated with Molly, his wife, right? Not exclusively, because Molly is more than that. But so the opening sets us up with this kind man eating his liver, reflecting on the nature of animals, right? Then he goes to the butcher shop to buy some kidney. I know. Do you have any thoughts about the opening, and or do you want to wait until you get to your notes? Or
well, yeah, I mean the descriptive language, as usual, is a delight. There's just something so real about it, you know. This is like hyper realism. It's almost like a heightened sensory experience reading this prose,
for sure,
which is so precise and detailed, you know.
Gave to his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine, right? And like that's associated with a kind of savoriness, this kidney that he's craving.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of impossible to think of. Stephen doesn't inhabit the world the way that Bloom does, and that's important, right? Stephen is disembodied, as we say, and from the beginning, our everyman hero is fully embodied, right? And not wrapped up in abstract ideas, but thinking about food. He's going to make food. He's going to feed his wife, right? He's in a kind of servant relationship to her. And first he feeds the animal and so on, right? He's kind of in tune with his immediate surroundings too.
Yeah, he's a great housewife.
He is a housewife, right? Though he's also a fully employed, ad canvasser, which we'll get to as well. I'd also say just, he's going to go to the pork butcher, and we already talked briefly about how that's a fellow non-kosher Hungarian Jew, right? Bloom is an outsider in the society. Before he goes out, he asks Molly if she wants anything. Molly is still in bed. Bloom is the one who's going to always get up in the morning, tidy the house, and he brings breakfast to his wife, right?
Breakfast in bed.
Breakfast in bed, right? And that's a kind of voluntary submissiveness, right? He is Ulysses, who has to every day wake up next to the nymph and serve her, right? But when he asks Molly what she wants for breakfast, she says, MN, right? Talking about M, right? Just an indescribable, grunt in the background. She's still sleeping. And she's introduced as the Gibraltar girl. That's important. The fact that she is half Spanish, right? Her mother is Spanish. She was born in Gibraltar. That will be important later. She has dark eyes, dark hair, so she is both Irish, but there's a bit of the sort of Mediterranean, Southern European outsider, right? So she's an outsider in some ways the way Bloom is, not as much, right? And she's on her bed. We discovered that old Tweety, Molly's father, originally bought the bed that she sleeps in, and old Tweety made a lot of money on stamps. Leopold Bloom admires that the old cat was able to do well in the world. Bloom is nothing if not pragmatic, right, and always thinks about how people make money and how to get by in the world and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's in the first few pages here, right? And I just think it's a fantastic introduction to our very genial hero, right? I knew immediately after the first time I read this, after 3 pages of reading this, is like, if this is the contemporary Ulysses, I'm going to really enjoy this person, right, and being with him.
Yeah. Well, pictured in this slide is the logo of the Freeman's Journal, which is mentioned in your notes here at the bottom. You say Bloom, the ad canvasser, works for the Freeman's Journal, Dublin's nationalistic daily, and the dream of home rule sun rising up in the Northwest. I should say rising, not rinsing.
So that's the kind of sort of, patriotic nationalistic imagery that's appearing in this nationalistic journal that he works for. And I think that's interesting because I think that, Ireland dreaming of becoming its own nation is akin to Bloom's reveries in this chapter on the mythic East, somewhere in the East. These images of wandering and so on, wander through on streets, turbaned faces going by, dark caves of carpet shops, big man, wander along all day, get on to sundown, the shadow of the mosques along the pillars. All this imagery, I think, relates later to the sort of images of Zionism, right, that appear later in the chapter as well.
Orientalist images, as you say.
Orientalist images, yes.
Well, so we should remember that the events of the novel take place in 1904, which is before independence, right?
Right.
But Joyce is writing or publishing at least in 1922, which is after those events, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the date of Irish independence? What was it? The Easter Uprising and the
1919, I think. Let me see.
And those
1919 to 1921, the Irish War of Independence,
as Yeats
and so
described
1921,
a terrible beauty is born, in a poem about the those that were executed, right, by the colonial powers.
Right. So 1921, he publishes this in 23. He'd been publishing episodes before that. But yes, Ireland is scarcely a sort of new nation at that point.
Yeah.
The only other thing from page 1 is that there's some foreshadowing. Looking forward, there's a white slip of paper in his hat's leather
Very important
headband.
Yeah.
We're going to learn that paper says Henry Flower, which is Bloom's alter ego that emerges in the subsequent episode, and that's important, right?
Get it? Flower, Bloom, clever.
Flower, Bloom, that's right.
But that's not explicitly mentioned here, the name Henry Flower, but we do learn that later.
By the way, his father's original last name is Virag, right? And Virag means flower.
In Hungarian?
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, I forgot to say about the logo there. The home rule sun is important to me because it relates to the orange. And as I'll discuss later, I see Bloom as a kind of sun king making his appearance and rising with the dawn, or, at 8 a.m. the sun is just beginning to rise. It has risen, but, it's rising in the sky.
Right.
Like that home rule sun.
We can probably go to the next page.
Yeah. So pictured here is
please.
It's an example of the Palestine Land Development Company Limited. So in Dublin at this time, they were advertising I guess they're advertising plots of land that people could purchase in Palestine.
Plots of land for a Zionist colony.
Yeah.
Correct.
So take that wherever you want.
Well, why don't we just jump with that, right? Like on page 60 there where it says Adendath Nataim, Planters Company. He's an ad. Interestingly, Leopold Bloom is an ad man, right? And it's an ad for a Zionist colony, right? And that sends him on his reveries, right? And there are these contrasting reveries. On the one hand, you have this very lush poetic imagery of orange groves and immense melon fields north of Jaffa, right?
I've been there.
You have images of camels, cattle, and quiet long days, pruning, ripening, pleasant evenings. He starts thinking about Gibraltar and the Mediterranean, which is where Mali is from. And then on the next page, immediately after that, right, after the cloud cover, a cloud began to cover the sun wholly, slowly, gray, far. That's the same cloud in chapter 1 that covers over when Stephen has a shift in point of view, interestingly. So there's an example of parallax, right? Here's it reminds us of the scene earlier with Stephen.
Episode 1, you say?
Episode 1. But then, right, after
what happens, just to pause on that or linger on that.
I'll have to look again, but there is we can go back.
They're outside. He's on top of the tower, and he's on the tower. Cloud cover. Okay,
right. And there's a sort of shift in mood and so on, right?
Yeah.
So here's the shift. Here's the cloud again, right? The gray cloud, and then Bloom's reveries shift from that sort of Zionist, southern eastern land. Again, he's an exiled Jew, right? All Jews are wanderers. But then he says, no, not like that. A barren land, barren waste, volcanic lake, the Dead Sea, no fish, weedles sunk deep in the earth. I'll just jump around. Sodom, Gomorrah, the cities on the plain, all dead names. Then he starts thinking about the Jews, the oldest people, wandered far away all over the earth, captivity to captivity, multiplying, dying, being born everywhere. It lay there now. Now it could bear no more. Dead, an old woman's, the gray sunken cunt of the world.
You said desolation. The C word.
Gray horror seared his flesh. This is very interesting to me, right? These two contrasting visions, right? The one where he gets swept away by this Zionist fantasy, if you will, this fantasy of an Eden, of a place before, living in a state of exile. And let's remember that Joyce himself, he felt himself always exiled from everything, all the nets of histories and so on, right?
Yeah.
And then he revises his vision and he gives us this horrific post-apocalyptic sort of landscape, if you will, right? Culminating in that horrific gray sunken cunt of the world. But it also gets to him. Gray horror seared his flesh. That visceral reaction to his own sort of contrasting visions. So here we have this, like, on the surface, everyday guy, right, who is harboring these powerful sort of primordial urges and images and so on.
Yeah, well, that's I hadn't really focused on that when I read that section, but that's a very important point. Like he's undermining his own idealism, right?
Right.
Like the Zionist fantasy, as you aptly called it, and as we know now, it's a dangerous, ruinous fantasy.
I'd say any fantasies of some sort of
utopian
or mythic past are doomed to failure, if not the antithesis.
But the other thing I would say is this vision, this idealized vision, is very vague.
Right.
He's never been there, so he imagines the orange groves of Jaffa.
Mm-hmm.
I have been. You haven't been? Well, I have. But he imagines the orange groves and, the Edenic qualities, but that's contrasted with the images of the cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Dead Sea, and so on. But also it's mixed up with his thoughts of, Andalusia, I would say, and southern Spain. And so it's that
Mali's origin.
Yeah, Mali's origin, which, he associates in a way with his own. There's a kind of Near Eastern Orientalist fantasy, which is not at all clear. So that's something to keep in mind. And
I'll also, just to interject finally, that when he has this vision of orange groves and immense melon fields north of Jaffa, we want to remember, and we talked about this in the Proteus episode, when Stephen has a dream, open hallway, street of harlots. Remember Harun al-Rashid?
Right.
I am almosting it.
Yes.
That man led me, spoke. I was not afraid. The melon he held against my face.
Melon.
Smiled, cream fruit. So
he
has a dream of this sort of Eastern sort of wise ruler who offers him a melon here.
Yeah. And interestingly, he's an Arab, right? He's not a Jew, Harun al-Rashid. So that's what I meant about the vagueness. It's just somewhere over there in the Near East, or maybe Spain. Like that's the Ithaca that he's longing for. It's an Ithaca or Zion of the mind. It's not like the literal Palestine, although it is, but it also is not.
Right.
Maybe that's the danger, trying to make that mythical, idealized utopia reality. That's when the horrors begin.
Yeah, that's when history, the nightmare from which I'm trying to awake.
Yeah,
just perpetuate the cycle. I would also say that, interestingly, I'm just thinking about this now, if Stephen has that premonitory dream of the Easterner, the exotic Easterner, offering him melon, right? And here we have Bloom's fantasy about orange groves and immense melon fields that he then undermines in his sort of vision of apocalyptic waste, right? I don't know. That may be a kind of warning about being seduced by those who might offer those kinds of dreams. Right.
Well, I mean, it's that parallax theme that you mentioned. They're already, unbeknownst to them, they're already, destined to cross paths on this day.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the next door neighbor. You want to comment on the crooked skirt?
Yeah. Let me actually just jump up a little bit, just so kind of going chronologically. The crooked skirt, by that you mean what?
Well, it says the way her crooked skirt swings at each whack.
Oh, yes.
His eyes rested on her vigorous hips. But go ahead. You wanted to say something about Zlugach.
Yeah, so, okay, when he leaves the house, he's left Molly. Molly is like, forget whatever, right? He goes out, he gets to Dlugatz's a kind of double, right? Another secular, non-kosher Jew. I just love this line. So the shiny links of sausage, packed with force meat, fed his gaze, and he breathed in tranquilly the lukewarm breath of cooked, spicy pig's blood. So I just think that's, again, he's taking in the world.
The non-kosher
Exactly. He
aspect
breathed something
his
about
taste.
he breathed in tranquilly, right? Later he imagines Molly up to her nose with her bed sheets, breathing herself in, right? He's a man very attuned to the olfactory world, if you will. But he's also a lech, right? While he is standing in line, he sees a woman in front of her, and here's what we get, right? His eyes rested on her vigorous hips. The way her crooked skirt swings at each whack, he starts imagining her whacking the laundry outside. To catch up and walk behind her if she went slowly behind her moving hams. They like them sizable. Prime sausage, he's thinking about her, right? So he fantasizes. He wants basically the transaction to quickly so that he can get outside and follow her and just follow her moving hams down the road, right? But he's unable to do that. But again,
Well,
very
that's
early
another
on,
thing he and Steven have in common, right? Steven likes the hiked up petticoats, and Bloom likes those moving hams.
He most certainly does. Right? And is he a lecher? Yes, he's a lecher, and he's more, right? He's so much more, but that's also part of him, right? And I would also say that we find out that he is already an emotional cuckold and soon to be an actual cuckold, right? In this scene, right? And when he's thinking about this woman with the vigorous hips who is walking down the road and he wants to follow her, he imagines that she goes off with some policeman, right? Someone else. She goes to some other man's arms, and we get the line here. The singe of disregard glowed to weak pleasure within his breast, right? The sting, it should say. Excuse me. The sting of disregard, right? So that's certainly, there's a sting, but it's giving him a weak pleasure as well, right? So he has these the urges of a cuckold. On the one hand, he's shamed by, being disregarded, but that kind of turns him on as well. We learn later in this episode that Bloom's wife, Molly, is going to be meeting up with Blazes Boylan in the middle of the day, and Bloom knows this, right? And he doesn't protest it and kind of lets it happen. And part of him wants it to happen, right? So very different from the traditional, heroic image of, men that we get in those
possessiveness towards females. Right. I remember when, the first time I read it as an undergraduate, a young, stupid, naive man, scarcely out of adolescence, being stunned by that. I couldn't believe that dynamic in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite non-traditional.
Absolutely.
Molly is not a trad wife, as they say, nor is Bloom a trad husband.
And so here at the bottom, even while he's feeling these things, right, he wants to be back home with Molly, and she is at once the bewitching nymph who keeps him happy, as well as Penelope, his wife, the one who he's loyal to. So to smell the gentle smoke of tea, fume the pan, sizzling butter, he's dreaming of making breakfast for her. Be near her ample, bed-warmed flesh. Yes.
And that of course, foreshadows
the culmination
of the book.
The epic, right? Which even those who haven't read it, right, but know something about it, the book ends with the big affirmative yes, unpunctuated yes from Molly Bloom, right? So there they are, right? They are together. They are the Odysseus and Penelope, right?
All right, but before we leave this, I think now is a good time to ask this question. Clearly, Molly is Penelope. That makes sense. How is she also Calypso?
Well, in my mind, it's because she has him bewitched, and she has him in a position of, in some ways, masochistic subservience, right? He's
trapped. He's on her island in a way.
Trapped on her island, which is also their home, right? So if the island was Rejoyce, the navel of the world, he's already living in the navel, right? Or the omphalos, as the image is pronounced earlier in the as we already discussed, right, in earlier episodes.
Yeah, omphalos just means navel in Greek.
It's omphalos, right.
I mean, it was various places were considered to be the navel of the world. One was Delphi, but you mentioned Ogygia, the island. It could really be anywhere. It could be Dublin, could be Palestine,
right,
could be Taiwan, could be North Carolina.
So just picking up where we left off, right? We were talking about Molly as both Calypso and Penelope. We should probably just very briefly, in terms of plot summary, she has a letter. Bloom has picked up the letters, and Molly has a letter, and it's addressed to Miss Marion Bloom rather than to Mrs. Leopold Bloom. And that's important because that letter is from Blazes Boylan. And Blazes Boylan is her professional manager, basically, right? Her impresario. Molly is an opera singer, right? So she is not a trad wife, a diva, an opera singer. She's not a trad wife, as Mark was saying. And Bloom notices this, right? And feels the disrespect in that, right? And yet he is still dutifully serving his Calypso Penelope. And you asked, how she both, the visual and olfactory presence of her seduces and tames him, right? He looked calmly down on her bulk and between her long, soft bubs, sloping within her nightdress like a she-goat's udder. The warmth of her couched body rose on the air, mingling with the fragrance of the tea she poured. So she is that's like her perfume, right? Her bubs, her perfume, everything is just seductive to him, right? Anyway, they have a fantastic conversation. She's reading a book in bed. She goes, I don't know what this word is. And the word is metempsychosis, which, do you want to tell the readers or the listeners what that means, metempsychosis?
Well, it's transmigration of souls, otherwise known as reincarnation.
Right. And he says metempsychosis, and she says, and I love it. Yes, says Molly. Who's he when he's at home? Which is basically an English idiom of the time, like, who is this guy anyway, or what does this dude do?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean, right? But I do think that who's he when he's at home has multiple meanings, right? If it's referring to Bloom, like, who is Bloom when he is at home, right? Bloom is this, he is with his Penelope, his Calypso, and there's this dynamic between them. This is who he is at home. That is not who he is out in the world, and so on, right? So the idea that Bloom has a multiplicity of sort of selves, or a multifaceted, identity is there from the very beginning.
And more generally, it's a questioning of identity, right? Like, if we're all reincarnated souls, do we have individuality? Do we have stable identities? Who are we when we're at home?
Right.
Or not at home?
Exactly. And just moving along, we see that Molly is reading some melodramatic romances. What is it called? Ruby, the Pride of the Ring, right?
Yeah.
And he reads a bit of it. It says, the monster Maffei desisted and flung his victim from him with an oath. And then Bloom immediately thinks, cruelty behind it all, doped animals. He'd mentioned cruelty before with the cat, if you remember. But anyway, she's reading this melodramatic stuff. And then we get the image of the nymph. It's hanging over the bed. There's a painting, the bath of the nymph over the bed. Right,
which is not a real painting or print.
Reproduction,
but it's not. I mean, if you look it up, what do you find? There is no such. It's fictionalized, right?
It's fictionalized. Yeah, it's kind of just a generic.
It's a genre
reproduction.
Picture, yes,
and here is what Bloom says about it: splendid masterpiece in art colors. Not unlike her with her hair down, slimmer. So he sees the image of the nymph. Not unlike her, Molly, a little slimmer, not as thick, right? But he associates the nymph with her, right? And then he thinks, she said it would look nice over the bed. Naked nymphs, Greece, and for instance, all the people that lived then. So right there, he's thinking about Greece, right? This is another connection, obviously, to Homer's world, right? And the mythic that underpins the quotidian, as we talked about, right? And the picture kind of nicely pulls together, right? The nymph is there hanging on the wall, and the nymph, the flesh and blood nymph, is right there in the bed, right?
Yeah. Well, the picture I've included here in the slideshow is just random. It's not meant to be a representation of or a reproduction of whatever they have hanging, but it's probably something like this. You know, you imagine it being kind of tacky. It's called a masterpiece, but I think that's the description found in Photo Bits, right? The magazine they subscribed to and got this free print from. So
it's basically, reproductions, generic reproductions for the bourgeoisie, basically.
Something you would see in a cheap hotel room as well.
Yeah, exactly. So parody as well. If this is the image of the Greek nymphs, they exist now as these little tawdry reproductions.
Yeah.
We learned also that Bloom is a father. He has a daughter, Millie, who writes him a sweet letter, Dearest Popley. She is 15 years old. She is where is she living, right? But she is basically being trained at a photo gallery, I believe, right? If I'm not mistaken,
south.
Right? Down south, I think it is, right?
Or is it west in Galway? I can't remember.
It's not Galway.
Okay.
But anyway, she's away, right? So they're sort of empty nesters in a way. We also learn there's a reference to the fact that Bloom had a son, Rudy, who's been dead now 11 years. This is important, right? He does not have a son. His son died at, I think, 11 days old, right? So he and Molly, that's their primal loss, right? And that is one of the reasons that they are, in many ways, sexually estranged from each other. This sort of unresolved wound. He will, throughout the epic, continue to have some thoughts about his dead son. Certainly in the Hades episode, right? We will see that, right? We'll learn later also that Bloom, in the next episode, right, that his father died of suicide, right? So he lacks a father and a son. So that father-son thing is there as well. And he has his worries, as a father does, about, both Millie, his daughter's budding desirability, and his own impending cuckoldry, right? He thinks about Millie, young kiss is the first, it will happen, yes. And then it's like later, prevent, useless, can't move, right? And that's more in reference to, he knows that Boylan will be paying Molly a visit later where he's out, and it's just going to happen. He accepts it. And this is what you were mentioning, like you just kind of floored you when you first read it, right? He knows it's gonna happen. He's gonna let it happen, right? We'll probably talk more about this, but then after that, he goes out to the Jakes and takes a shit, right? He liked to read at stool, and he has various musings, and probably this was another of the chapters that was deemed obscene. He certainly couldn't call it pornographic, but obscene, right? Had we seen this in literature, like a 2-page depiction of the guy sitting there taking a crap, right? So we have that at the end, but again, that sort of emphasizes Bloom's tactile nature, right? And just very, very quickly, quickly he read, restraining himself, the first column, and yielding but resisting began the second. We hear later that midway his last resistance yielding, he allowed his bowels to ease themselves quietly as he read, reading still patiently, that slight constipation of yesterday quite gone. So he's enjoying the simple pleasure of taking a shit and reading, right? And which of us is not guilty of that, right? Everyday pleasure. But here it is in the epic of life, Ulysses, right?
Scatological literature.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly. Indeed. And then the end, the last line is poor Dignam, right? He's thinking about the man whose funeral he's going to attend later this morning at 11 o'clock in the Hades section, when he goes to the funeral of Patty Dignam, who just died unexpectedly. So, when I take all of this together, it's just a very robust, full, ample depiction of a very complex and endearing a man, right? Who has his quirks, right? Some would even say his flaws. Those who want to take offense easily, yes, go ahead, take offense easily. He ogles women discreetly, right? And notices their moving hams and so on, right? He loves his wife and is devoted to her, but he's also accepted his place as a cuckold, right? And there's a masochistic sort of thrill that burns him and so on. He's sympathetic to cats, right? He dreams of Eden. He realizes he dreams of apocalypse, right? He has sympathy for his fellow man, right? Just a fantastic, full beautiful sort of introduction to the man we'll be following around.
I just realized he's got two nicknames in the family, right? He's both Poldy and Papley.
Right.
Molly calls him Poldy, and then Millie, the daughter, calls him Papley. And she, as we find out later, she calls herself Silly Millie, and Molly is actually Marion. So everyone's got these cute little nicknames,
right,
terms of affection.
And Poldy, interestingly enough, she doesn't call him Leopold. She takes away his Leo. I mean, his lion.
Oh, good point.
Take his virility, right? Poldy, is breakfast ready? Oh, she waits in bed every day, and she gets treated like a queen, right? I mean, brings him the breakfast, right? Very happily.
Yeah, that's also shocking.
Moments, right?
Yeah.
He gives her the letter from Blazes, and she takes a look at it and just puts it under a pillow,
right?
And then when he comes back later, he notices that she's opened the envelope, right? Those are painful moments for our hero, right? But there's just still something moving to me in the fact that he is there. He's never going to leave her. Right?
So our Penelope is unable to resist her suitors.
Right. Well, it's debated whether this is the first time she's actually physically cuckolded him or not, but we will see, as we get into the epic.
Okay. Well, I take it as a given that it's happened more than once, but maybe I'm being pessimistic. All right, so let's get into my notes, which, as I said, I tried to arrange according to topic and theme. So let's see how that goes. Should make for a more or a less disjointed conversation. So I want to focus on the M, of course, that big M, which takes up an entire page and begins not only this episode, but the whole Odyssey section of the novel, the next 12 episodes, the Odysseus or Ulysses section. So what is M? Well, literally it's Mr., as in Mr. Leopold Bloom. That's how it begins. But also, I would say it's masochist, metempsychosis. There's mention of this story called Matcham's Masterstroke. There are all kinds of surely intentional uses of M. You mentioned the monster Mafe. There's Mullingar. There's Mr. and Mrs.
Mullingar. That's where Millie is.
That's
Millie's
where Millie is. So there you go. Right. There's an M.
Right.
Molly, Marion, Millie, the meow of the cat, the which Molly mutters in a half awake state. And also, M is for family, curiously enough. You got Mr. Bloom, Mrs. Marion or Molly, and Millie. It's a family of M's, with Bloom being odd man out in that he's Leopold Poldy Bloom, but he is Mr. with the M there. So something to keep in mind as we keep reading the M. Why was that chosen? Surely it's no accident. So kidney, which you see pictured here, looks a bit disgusting, actually. Imagine him taking that. I guess it's wrapped in paper, and he slides it into his pocket, one of these kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look that delicious to me, but I guess when it's fried, maybe it's not so bad. I do love me some pork, so maybe
lots
pork
of references
kidney
to
would be good.
Kidneys throughout. Kidney ooze blood gouts. There's some great phrases there, right?
Yeah, most of all, he liked grilled mutton kidneys, which gave to his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine. Mutton, lamb, is not unkosher, is it? I mean,
that I don't know.
I don't think so. No, lamb is perfectly halal or kosher.
But we can say with certainty that pork
is not. Yeah,
that's a filthy animal.
So he wants mutton, but Thursday, and we know it's Thursday from I think the last episode. There's already, or maybe it was episode 2. Yeah, it was episode 2. The boys talk about, it's Thursday, the day for hockey. But because it's not a good day for mutton at Buckley's, he goes to Delugach's for the pork kidney. And as you say, the kidney oozed blood gouts or blood guts on the willow patterned dish. Very graphic, descriptive language. So his hand accepted the moist, tender gland and slid it into a side pocket.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Even though, this image is not that attractive. Later, as he's cooking, he prodded a fork into the kidney and slapped it over.
Very tactile.
Yeah, by prodding a fork under the kidney, he detached it and turned it turtle on its back because at one point it's burning. He shore away the burnt flesh and flung it to the cat. So, yeah, kidney throughout. Very important. Next topic or theme is the cat. We talked about meow and later meow and meow. Variations on the meow. Pussins, also pussy, such a stupid pussins.
I had a cat, Bowie, passed away several years ago. We still have two cats, but did absolutely that. Merc now. Merc now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, the onomatopoeia is always
such a
important.
Stupid pussins. I never saw such a stupid pussins as the pussins. He said, I love that. He's saying that tenderly, right? It's just fantastic.
Okay, well, let's go to Molly. The, that's onomatopoeia as well. The noise someone would make in their half awake, half dreaming state. But it also reminds me of the Greek root meaning memory, you know? Think of mnemosyne, right?
Right.
The muse. The loose brass quoits of the bedstead jingled. This is mentioned a couple of times, and pictured here is a big brass bed.
And this is going to be a motif, right? We'll see it recur throughout the sound of the quoits jingling, right? Yeah. And of course, we know that this is prefiguring the bed that's going to be in motion later when Blazes Boylan comes over to pay Calypso / Penelope a visit.
Yeah, I meant to say mnemosyne, right? One of the Titans, but related to memory. Okay, Mrs. Marion Bloom. She calls him Poldy. We talked about that. Okay, and this is Poldy. Letting the blind up by gentle tugs, halfway his backward eye saw her glance at the letter and tuck it under her pillow. So you already mentioned that, but I just wanted to point out that he doesn't even dream of confronting her, right? Like,
nope,
he's aware of all this, and he just notes it and lets it pass.
He submits.
Yeah.
He acquiesces.
Surprising. Hurry up with that tea, she says. I mean, it's really pretty shocking the way she communicates with him. It's all jussive. It's all, imperative. Do this, do that. And then when he talks to her, she just ignores him as if he's not even there. Scald the teapot. What a time you were. And again, she set the harnesses jingling as she raised herself briskly. It's so funny imagining this buxom, perhaps overweight, half Spanish diva, demanding to be waited on.
She needs her beauty sleep. I mean, she's got some singing to do, brother.
Right. Her large,
she's a working girl. Her large,
soft bugs. Yeah. That makes it all worthwhile, I guess. He knows
sloping within her nightdress like a she-goat's udder.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also the source of milk and she's animalistic as well, right?
Right. And it's all worth it because he knows eventually, despite all his humiliations and whatnot, and, the cuckoldry, at the end of the day, he's the one who's going to enjoy those large, soft bubs on a permanent basis.
Yeah.
So a strip of torn envelope peeped from under the dimpled pillow. She's already read the letter. And the tearing is interesting, too, because it reminds us of Stephen tearing Daisy's letter and later Bloom tearing the paper he wipes his ass with, right? So I noted here twice Molly ignores Poldy. He asks, do you want the blind up? She doesn't even answer. Do you want the window open a little? No answer. I mean, it's amazing. And following the pointing of her finger, he took up a leg of her soiled drawers from the bed. She's just like pointing. She doesn't even speak. It's like, you, servant, over there. And he's like, this?
Well, I love that.
Guess again.
her soiled drawers, right?
Yes.
And later, after Boylan leaves, she'll probably throw her drawers aside and so on, and Poldy will fucking pick them up again.
Yeah, and sniff them, no doubt. as one does. So Molly, as you pointed out, Molly is reading Ruby, the Pride of the Ring. This reminded me of Mrs. Deadless and her Turco the Terrible fascination.
Right.
You know, the perhaps obscene pantomime that she secretly attended or read about. And so Molly says there's nothing smutty in it, as if she's disappointed. Or I don't know. How did you take that?
Let's see. Did you finish it? She says, yes, there's nothing smutty in it. Is she in love with the first fellow all that time? Right. I'm not sure. Right. I'm not sure if it's disappointed or not. Right. But she wants more. Because Bloom asks, never read it. Do you want another? And this time she does answer, yes. Get another of Paul de Cox. Nice name he has.
Yeah.
So there we go, right? Her little sexual illusions there. And interestingly, saying that in front of her husband, who she probably knows that he knows, right? Probably, right? And to say this here, right? She's going to get some cock later, as we all know, right? So Paul de Cox, nice name he has.
Well, then, after all that, a third time Molly ignores Poldy when he explains metempsychosis. And she's the one who wanted the explanation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So because he had to think for a minute, it wasn't immediate, she already lost interest. Meanwhile, he's like trying to explain, oh, it means reincarnation, you know, from the Greek. It's a Greek word. And she just totally ignores him. No reaction. Yeah. She says, there's a smell of burn. Did you leave anything on the fire? And he says, oh, the kidney. And he, runs downstairs to prevent the house from burning down, I guess you could say. But the interaction it's really, as I'm rereading it, I'm shocked by it. You know, it's like, why would you tolerate this shit? I mean,
and yet Bloom, he is the man who tolerates that shit, right? And so we'll be thinking about that throughout the day, right? And what that says about him and their dynamic and the way that he compensates for the state of their marriage, right? And again, we need to remember behind all this, right? There's a history and there's the loss of Rudy and so on. And in the next chapter, we'll learn about his alter ego, Henry Flower, and the way that he's using that as a kind of outlet, if you will.
And let's not forget what happens on Sandy Mount Strand later.
Yes.
All right, so I thought this was funny, and, it has double meaning to me, to dirty minds like mine. She's talking to the cat, of course, but she says, come, pussy, come.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. That is so blatant.
Yeah.
Gotta love that.
Well, that's Joyce. Joyce was a naughty man in many, many ways.
And later that pussy does come in both senses. All right, her full wagging bub. There's the bub again. Can't get enough of those bubs. All right, there's brief mention of Molly's father. You talked about him. He's called Old Tweedy. Hard as nails at a bargain, Old Tweedy. I guess he's some retired military guy. Yeah. I rose from the ranks, sir, and I'm proud of it. Right. Just a blowhard kind of, ex-military dude.
And that is Bloom thinking about him and conjuring his voice as a way to kind of mock it, right? But then he does follow it with still, he had the brains enough to make that corner and stamp. Yeah. So apparently Tweedy was a savvy investor.
And you can imagine that the in-laws probably underestimated him like everyone does, right? They're like, this guy's a fucking chump and a cuck. But
no, I think what they said is this guy's a Jew.
Well,
right? Our daughter is marrying a Jew.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Bloom never is going to be a confrontational, in-your-face man. He's a sensitive observer. He's a deep feeler. But his status as his heroic mythic status is his interiority, his ample interiority, not his external, conquests.
But that's like Odysseus in a way too. He is a shapeshifter himself, and he's deceitful, and he lets people underestimate him. Most famously, I guess, when he returns to Ithaca and he's disguised as a beggar, and he
Mm-hmm.
endures all the insults until he rises up and takes his
Right.
revenge. So in that sense, Bloom is Odyssean. I mean, he endures all the insults and injuries, and yet you could say
Triumphs
at
in
the
the
end
end.
of the day he triumphs. Yeah.
And I think your point about Odysseus as a shapeshifter, the man of many disguises, Homer tells us in the opening, right? Sing of me, the man of many disguises. That is absolutely applicable to Bloom in many ways. We've seen already in this first episode his many sides, right? And we're going to see more.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the two most important would be cuckold masochist and perv, right? Lech.
Yeah, but I would also say Bloom, his sympathy, right? His curiosity, his
compassion for
his
all
compassion,
living creatures.
His embodied existence, right? He lives a full life insofar as he's fully embodied in the way that Stephen is. So there's that too, right? All of that and more, as we'll see.
Yeah, I shouldn't have focused purely on the sexual, but
it's there. That's not just like in this chapter. I mean, that's going to be developed.
Right.
So that's absolutely essential.
All right. So there were some interesting examples of foreshadowing, which we know about because we've read this before, and you touched upon some of these, but most importantly, he peeped quickly inside the leather headband, white slip of paper, quite safe. So he's got, what is this? It's his letter that he's going to mail as Henry Flower to his correspondent, or it's her letter to him?
It's neither. He goes in the next chapter, in the next episode, to pick up her letter at the postal. He's waiting for her response, but we'll talk about that then. The letter inside it just says Henry Flower, I think, as we'll see in the next chapter.
On the doorstep, he felt in his hip pocket for the latch key. Not there. In the trousers I left off. Must get it. Potato I have. So the potato, a very Irish image, right? With the potato famine and all that. It's the staple food in Ireland.
He travels with the potato, right? Also, this is another kind of parallax-like moment because he doesn't have his latchkey, and
the key
Stephen leaves at the end of episode 1, right?
Yes.
Without the key. He gives his key over to Mulligan.
Yep, I was about to say that. Sad thing about poor Dignam, you mentioned him already. Seaside Girls, that reminds us maybe of the Sirens episode later, which is one of my favorites.
And that's associated with Blazes Boylan,
and
right?
Blazes Boylan, sure. Who, is man who attracts sirens, I guess you could say.
He ran a show of the Seaside Girls, who had their Seaside Girls song and so on. Yeah. So Blazes Boylan is the charismatic impresario and so on.
Wonder, have I time for a bath this morning? That comes up later, I guess in the next episode, right? What time is the funeral? Better find out in the paper. So that's the Hades episode being foreshadowed. And poor Dignam, it's his funeral that he'll be going to. So a lot of, we talked about this before, in every episode there are allusions to what has already occurred, and then there's foreshadowing of what's to come. Examples
connective tissue almost, right?
Yeah. And so examples of what I'm calling callback, that is, allusions to things that already happened. Walk along a strand, strange land. Of course, that reminds us of Proteus, right? And eager fire from fox eyes, that might remind us of the fox who buried his grandmother in episode 2. Remember that? That Aesop-like image. Okay. So the sun, I think, is an important theme or topic. The sun was nearing the steeple of George's church. So literally the sun at 8 a.m. is still rising in the sky. And he muses, somewhere in the east, early morning, set off at dawn, travel round in front of the sun, steal a day's march on him, in the track of the sun, sunburst on the title page. We talked about that, a home rule sun rising up in the northwest from the laneway behind the Bank of Ireland. I don't know why I wrote this twice. Home rule sun rising up in the northwest. A cloud began to cover the sun. Holy, slowly, holy. You talked about that and the parallax with episode 1. Quick, warm sunlight came running from Berkeley Road. So many mentions of the sun, which is related to the color orange, in my opinion. And as I said, Bloom to me is kind of the sun king.
Right. And it also harkens back to the Mediterranean and the sun of the Homer's world, right? Interestingly, you know, his thoughts about the sun are associated with mythic elements, the somewhere in the east, early morning, set off at dawns. And there's also the historical, you know, the metaphorical homeroom sun rising the northwest, right? The desire for this, the new political issues, historical issues, as well as mythic sort of resonances right there. Associated with the sun.
Yep. So there are several references to Dublin geography. We've got Larry O'Rourke's, which is some pub, Dorset Street. He muses to himself, good puzzle would be cross Dublin without passing a pub. That's a hilarious little thought that he has. And finally, he turned into Eccles Street, hurrying homeward. So if you've got a map, you can actually follow the course of his wanderings, you know, the Ulysses character's wanderings through Dublin. The neighbor girl. Yeah, go ahead.
I just thought about this now, but this initial odyssey where he leaves the house and just does a quick loop and comes back to the house. That's a mirror of the larger pattern, right? He will then leave the house for the entire day and go out, right? Eventually meet Stephen, and then come back to the house later, right? And of course, that mirrors the mythic themes of departure and return, which is what the Odyssey is all about, right?
Yeah, so this episode's kind of an epic in miniature, right? An Apillion, as they say. I mean, he leaves home, wanders around, comes back home after a very short journey, right? And as you say, that's like the microcosm of the larger odyssey that will take place throughout the day.
Right.
All right, anything else here? The neighbor girl, the next door girl at the counter. So he sees her at the pork butcher's, and we've already mentioned how his eyes rested on her vigorous hips, and he imagines catching up and walking behind her. Pleasant to see first thing in the morning. She leaves first, and he feels kind of rushed. He's like, come on, hurry up. Give me that kidney so I can catch up with her.
Get out there and be hypnotized by her swaying hips.
Stalk her. But yeah, she's gone by the time he gets outside. He says, oh, well, whatever. All right, moving on. So as I said, the depiction of Zionism is a central concern for me as I'm reading this time.
Excuse me.
For, you know, obvious reasons, I would say. But there's mention of the model farm at Kinnereth on the lakeshore of Tiberias. That's basically the Sea of Galilee. I've been there. There's mention of Moses Montefiore. I didn't look that up. Did you check that? Is he maybe one of the colonists, like offering plots of land or something?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
What page is that? Oh, you have a different page number. I've got this. I'll find it. Keep going.
So we already talked about Agendat Netaim, the Planters Company. Sandy Tracts, that's TRACTS, from Turkish government. Of course, at this time, Palestine is part of the Ottoman Empire, right? So you would be purchasing land from them, which is what those original settlers did. Orange groves and immense melon fields north of Jaffa. We talked about that. The gray sunken cunt of the world. So, yeah, I think we covered that before.
Okay, here's the Moises Montefiore from one of the Ulysses annotated.
Right.
That's 1784. Gifford. Yeah. Gifford's annotation. 1784 to 1885. Born Anglo-Italian, became a wealthy English philanthropist who used his influence and wealth to secure political emancipation of Jews in England, to alleviate Jewish suffering elsewhere in Europe, and to encourage the colonization of Palestine at the beginning of the Zionist movement in the latter half of the 19th century. Among the Jews of Europe, his name became a synonym for orthodox sanctity. That's important. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's also a letter. He slit open his letter. At first, we don't know what this is. Later, he says, what was that about some young student and a picnic? He creased out the letter at his side, reading it slowly as he chewed. He's back in the kitchen eating his breakfast, the slightly burned kidney. And then we get the letter in full to Dearest Papley on page 66 of my text. Maybe that's worth reading. Let me see here. Let me find that. So this is obviously from Silly Millie. It says, dearest, or she says, Dearest Papley, this is the 15-year-old daughter, right? Thanks ever so much for the lovely birthday present. It suits me splendid. Everyone says I'm quite the belle in my new tam. That's another hat, isn't it? Tam O'Shanter.
Yep.
I got Mummy's lovely box of creams and am writing. They are lovely. I am getting on swimming in the photo business now. Remember the mention of the photograph girl double exposure in episode 1?
Right.
Mr. Glenn took one of me and Mrs. will send when developed. We did great biz yesterday, fair day, and all the beef to the heels we're in. We are going to Luff Owl on Monday. Is that, how do you pronounce that? Lough?
Not sure.
Luff, Lau, Owl on Monday with a few friends to make a scrap picnic. Give my love to Mummy and to yourself a big kiss and thanks. You can tell she's just dashing this letter off. I hear them at the piano downstairs. There's to be a concert in the Greville Arms on Saturday. There is a young student, he remembers that part, comes here some evenings named Bannon. Remember him? No relation to Steve, or maybe there is. His cousins or something are big swells. He sings Boylan's, I was on the pop of writing Blazes Boylan's song about those seaside girls. Tell him Silly Millie sends my best respects, meaning tell Boylan. Must now close with fondest love, your fond daughter Millie. P.S. Excuse bad writing, I'm in a hurry. Bye-bye, M. There's your M again. So the line that most catches the father's, Papley's attention is, there is a young student comes here some evenings named Bannon. Whoa, wait a minute, alarm bells. What's this?
Parallax.
Yeah. Who's that young student? What are his intentions toward my daughter?
Right. And that's mentioned at the near the end of episode 1, which I think we discussed when Mulligan runs into one of his buddies who talks about Bannon and the girl he met out in Mullinger, the photo girl, right?
Yeah. So what is that? So what is she doing? She's like working as a model. They take photographs of her to attract tourists.
She's in the photo business. I think she's just learning how to be a photographer's apprentice or something like that. Maybe a shop girl. I'm not sure.
But it says, took one of me. Mr. Coughlin took one of me, and Mrs. will send when developed. So, I mean, it's just a test. Like, she's the subject of the photograph.
Yeah, they took a photo of her. I mean, that's all that means, I think, right?
Okay.
But the important part is she's off on her own and she's having a dandy time, right? She's meeting all these young men and so on, right? Bloom thinks 15 yesterday, right? Her first birthday away from home, separation. And then he starts remembering that when she was born, and then he remembers when Rudy was born and how he lost Rudy and so on. He thinks more about her coming out of her shell. And so he's thinking about his daughter sort of slowly moving into young womanhood, right? The inevitability of that's going to happen too, just as what's going to happen later is going to happen, which is Blazes Boylan coming to visit.
And here's the doting father. Then he read the letter again twice. I thought that was a fascinating detail, right? So he reads this dashed off note from his dear daughter a total of 3 times, I guess. What does that say? I mean, just means she's the apple of his eye, right? Like,
I mean, it's his only child. It's his sweet Millie. I mean, it's, and that's the kind of letter you'd expect from a 15-year-old, right? It's just dashed off. I mean, who's going to write their, it's realistic. She's having fun. She tells him she loves him. I got the presents. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, wonderful, right?
Very realistic.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. There's mention of poor old Professor Goodwin, who is a dreadful old case. Still, he was a courteous old chap, and the little mirror in his silk hat. What is this about? It's one little paragraph, and let me just read it. Poor old Professor Goodwin, dreadful old case. Still, he was a courteous old chap. Old-fashioned way he used to bow Molly off the platform. So maybe he's in the
Oh, it's a memory. It's a
opera.
memory.
Sure, but who is he? And the little mirror in his silk hat. The night Millie brought it into the parlor. Oh, look what I found in Professor Goodwin's hat, meaning the mirror, I guess. All we laughed. Sex breaking out even then. Pert little piece she was. He's talking about Millie there, but what I mean is Goodwin like some old lech, old perv? He's got a mirror so he can like look at what? What's that? What is that?
I don't know. What is the mirror? It's in the hat itself?
The little mirror in his silk hat. Millie finds it. It's some kind of secret, and it's apparently a naughty secret, and I don't know. She's being flirtatious even at that young age, or she's showing, like a precocious interest in sexual matters, as Freud has, warned us kids do. They know more than we give them credit for, I guess. Is that what's being alluded to here?
Well, possibly, sure. But I think now that I think about it, right, a man who has something embedded in his hat is also Leopold Bloom, right? And what does Leopold Bloom have in his hat? His alter ego, Henry Flower. He's having a correspondence with, he has a secret life apart from his married life too, right? He is not cheating on Molly physically, but he is emotionally, you could say, right? As we'll see in the next episode.
Yeah, well, that's something to look up. Maybe you can research that and get back to me if there's an explanation as to who this Professor Goodwin is.
We'll keep going, and I'll see if I can find it real fast.
Okay, well,
it's in here.
So next is Boylan. He's bringing the program, we're told. Yeah, that's not all he's bringing. Boylan's, I was on the pop of writing Blazes Boylan's song. We talked about that in the Seaside Girls. And interestingly, Bloom calls him facetiously, sarcastically, friend of the family. Yeah, that's what he is.
So real fast, I found the reference to Professor Goodwin.
Yes.
And this is all, it's relatively brief. A pianist who was Molly's accompanist from 1888 or 1889 to 1895. The concert, Bloom recalls, took place in 1893. So this is a 11-year-old memory, right? So Molly would have only been 4, a kind of flirty little 4-year-old, so I don't think we could attribute too much to her there, clearly. But someone who worked with Molly, apparently.
But, I mean, that's significant, isn't it? Sex breaking out even then, pert little piece she was. Like, he's talking about Millie, isn't he?
Yeah, Molly was probably a kind of Millie. Yes, he's talking about Millie being maybe a flirty little girl and so on, right? So Bloom sees women as having these kind of innate tendencies towards being sort of flirtatious and so on.
Yeah. All right.
Pert little piece.
All right, so orange. Yes, mention of orange groves, oranges 3 times, and then also there's an orange-keyed chamber pot. Orange.
That's Molly's chamber pot.
Yeah, so she doesn't even get up out of bed to piss. She pisses in the pot and has hubby dump it for her. Is that what we should assume?
I think so. Well, but also chamber pots were commonplace then, right? So everybody had chamber pots. In the middle of the night, you might use that and then empty it out the next day. So, but yeah, it's Molly's. It is Molly's chamber pot, and yes, I can imagine that Bloom is probably the one to take care of. He's the domestic upkeeper, right?
Yeah,
that's been established.
This slide, by the way, has a photo of an ad for Jaffa oranges. Buy Jaffa oranges. There's like a camel in the background. Pretty Orientalist image to attract the colonists. Metempsychosis. Met him what? She says, she tries to pronounce it, and that's how Bloom hears it or doesn't hear it, right? Met him what? Metempsychosis? Yes, who's he when he's at home, says Molly. And then, as we said, he explains in great detail. I mean, he takes all this trouble to explain it to her, and she's already moved on. She just totally ignores him.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's really
it's sort
stunning.
of sad, but also sad and comic and stunning and all those things.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I think this is the last slide here. So the nymph, bath of the nymph over the bed, given away with the Easter number of photo bits, as we said, naked nymphs, Greece, what they called nymphs, for example. So we've talked enough about the nymph, I suppose, and Molly is Penelope and also a nymph, and Calypso, which I guess is what Calypso is. Is she technically a nymph, Calypso?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Minor goddess.
Right. Okay, so yeah.
If whatever it's worth, she offers Odysseus, I meant to mention this earlier, immortality. That's his temptation. She can stay with him and be immortal. And he ultimately rejects that and chooses mortality over immortality, right? He chooses to go back to Penelope. He has this interesting speech where he says that you are far, far fair and beautiful than Penelope, right? Begins by flattering her and then says, but I long to be home, in my own land, etc., etc.
So you're saying he wouldn't choose to upload his brain to the cloud and live forever?
That's right.
As the Epstein pedophilic elite is preparing.
He's also not going to be a traditional Irish, if by that we think Irish Catholic, because in the Hades episode, he does not fall for the seductions of the other afterlife, right? The Christian afterlife and so on, right? He embraces this world, right? And acknowledges the perishability of the flesh and everything else, but we'll get to that later.
All right, so things related to Millie or Silly Millie. She was 15 yesterday, as you pointed out. Sex breaking out even then, pert little piece she was, remembering when she was 4, apparently. What was that about some young student and a picnic? Oh, well, she knows how to mind herself, but if not, no, nothing has happened. Of course, it might. So he has troubled affection, a soft qualm regret. Thought that was a nice description. And of course,
he's worried about his daughter probably having sex too.
Of course, yes.
What happens,
but it's mixed with his troubled affection for Molly.
Yes,
and of course,
absolutely.
Molly and Millie are clearly doubles in a sense. Millie is Molly Jr., as it were, kind of her younger doppelganger. All right, there's also mention of Rudy, poor little Rudy. He would be 11 now if he had lived. I didn't remember this, but you say he died 11 days old. That's interesting. So that was 11 years ago. All right, and then let's go to the scatological, and I mean that in a literal sense because it's the study of shit. Literally, 4 pages of this 16-page episode focus on his time in the toilet, so must be significant. He felt heavy, full, then a gentle loosening of his bowels. Too much trouble to fag up the stairs to the landing, right? He doesn't want to go back upstairs. So he goes to basically the outhouse, right? You call it the Jakes. I've heard Irish people call it the Jacks.
Oh, okay.
So we may want to check on the pronunciation. You know where that comes from? Jax is short for Ajax. You know how Ajax toilet cleaner is a thing in the States? That's where it comes from.
Really?
That's what I've heard, yes.
I remember the end of Blood Meridian, right? We have an image of the kid being killed by by what's his name? The big albino creature in the Jakes. Or maybe it's Jax, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, the judge.
The judge,
yeah.
Right? The horrific judge.
All right, so Bloom liked to read at stool, and he kicked open the crazy door of the Jacks. Better be careful not to get these trousers dirty for the funeral. That's a bit of foreshadowing. I love this phrase, a squat on the cuck stool, like almost as if he's a king on his throne, right? But it's also a cuck stool. He's literally a cuck himself. So hilarious.
And when he goes in, he has this little rhyme in his mind. The king was in his counting house.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm about to sit on my throne here.
Yeah. The Sun King.
Right.
humiliated in a way, right? Or at least we see another side of him undermined, let's say. He allowed his bowels to ease themselves quietly as he read, reading still patiently, that slight constipation of yesterday quite gone. Hope it's not too big to bring on piles again. No, just right. So, we've just experienced, or I don't know, vicariously experienced our hero taking a shit. I mean, his first appearance in the novel, this great epic novel, what does he do? He takes a shit. He gets humiliated by his Penelope, and then he takes a shit and wipes his ass.
Seated calm above his own rising smell.
Such a great, hilarious description. He tore away half the prize story sharply and wiped himself with it. This is so great because it's like, what is literature? After all, it's just toilet paper, you know?
That's right.
So, as I said, quantitatively, 1/4 of this episode, that's 4 of 16 pages, describes Poldy at stool. Hence the poop emoji on this slide.
Or I think the first 2 pages are him thinking about it, and then 2 full pages of him at stool. With
at stool or preparing for it,
Not to be too technical about it, but right.
I mean, that's pretty significant, isn't it? Like a quarter of this episode is toilet related.
Mm-hmm. And then during that
what
time,
are we in a Japanese porn?
Right. He's having all kinds of thoughts. He's having all kinds of thoughts, though, while this is happening, right? Among other things, like, is that Boylan well off? He has money. Why? I notice he has a good smell of his breath dancing. So he's, among other things, right? All these things that he's musing on as he...
and he's thinking again about the next door girl. He stands up and looks out a crack in the jacks or outhouse or whatever, and he's like, oh no, she's not there. And he says something like, I hope no ape comes knocking. He imagines someone, finding him on the toilet, on the cuck stool.
Nobody wants to be interrupted.
No.
It's the first crap of the day, right?
Yeah. The morning constitutional, as our friend Pat Murphy used to call it. All right, and then there's just some miscellaneous phrases that caught my attention. Dirty cleans. This is an interesting paradoxical statement. I can't remember the context, but dirty cleans, like, think about that in relation to the novel. This scatological, legally declared obscene work of literature, it had a cleansing effect on literary culture and, you could say Western society in general. I think Ezra Pound said the publication of Ulysses was like the lancing of a boil. It had a
liberatory effect
on Western culture
in terms of what can and can't be represented, what should and shouldn't be represented, right?
So dirty cleans. That seems like not just an offhand remark. It has deeper significance. Where is my hat, by the way? I guess he's taken off the bowler. I think he put it on when he went out, and then I guess when he came back in, he put it back maybe on the hat rack. Our prize Titbit, Matcham's masterstroke. We talked about that, but it's so funny to me that this magazine is called Titbits, right? I mean, I guess that's like tidbit, but obviously it has other associations for at least American readers. I thought this was a hilarious image as well. Stubbing his toes against the broken commode, stepping hastily down the stairs with a flurried stork's legs. He reminds me here of Basil Fawlty, the John Cleese character. He's just, and Basil is kind of a cuck too to Sybil. Ooh, there's another Greek, or at least classical name.
That's a great show.
He of course gives as good as he gets. I'm talking about Basil Fawlty, and he's much more confrontational with her than Poldy is with Molly. Okay, for sure. But I think Basil is kind of a cuck too. Like he's afraid of her, and she wears the pants in the family at the end of the day. I can imagine him like rushing around, bringing her breakfast in bed. I mean, sarcastically, he might say, "Anything else, darling? Is there anything else I can get you, my queen?" But he would still do it. You know what I mean?
For sure.
All right. And then this was hilarious too. The Russians, they'd only be an 8 o'clock breakfast for the Japanese, reference to the Russo-Japanese War, which, to the surprise of the West, the Japs won.
That was in, where is that from? What's the context for that?
I'd have to look it up again. I just pulled that out randomly. So I think that's where
he's conversing with someone briefly, isn't he?
Well, I think it's a memory, a stream of consciousness.
Okay.
He says bald head over the blind, cute old codger. He sees someone on the street, and then I know, he's imagining a conversation with Mr. O'Rourke. What's that, Mr. O'Rourke? Do you know what? The Russians, they'd only be an 8 o'clock breakfast for the Japanese.
That's him imagining what Mr. O'Rourke would say, I think.
Something like that.
Anyway. All right.
So, I've been including playlists with these episodes because why not? Everything should have a playlist. If you can think of anything else, please let me know. But I've got Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles and Here Comes the Sun King, both from Abbey Road. Because, as I said, I'm thinking of Bloom as a kind of Sun King. My Girl's Pussy, Harry Roy and his orchestra. Pussy, Pussins. Lay Lady Lay by Dylan for that big brass bed. And, of course, John Denver's Calypso. You got to have that. And then I just threw in an actual Calypso song, Deo by Harry Belafonte.
How about...
I hope I spelled that name right.
How about the Police, King of Pain?
King of Pain. Yeah, I got to put that in there. Sting of Disregard. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
King of Pain. Yeah, right. The masochist and wrapped around your finger if we're talking about the Police.
Right.
All right. So, as always, support Houston Joyce Society. Buy our book. It's called Flansday. It's the first novelette in the Aaronesque series, and Volume 2 has been coming soon for years now, but it really is coming soon. Watch for it on my Substack. I'll publish Part 1, Section 1, maybe we should call it Episode 1 of Wild's Day, Volume 2 of the Aaronesque series. That'll be published on Substack 2. I'm also working on a Turkish travelogue, so I'll get it up as soon as possible. And don't forget my weekly dose of Tao. I'm translating the Tao Te Ching with Dr. Hong, so watch for that too. This will be on YouTube. We've given up on live streaming because apparently Riverside can't get its shit together, so just watch the edited version, which cuts out all the awkward pauses. And once again, we had technical difficulties, so I'll clean that up and try to get it out on Monday, the 6th of April. So we'll see. But let me stop sharing this and we'll just wrap up here. Any final thoughts?
No, it's other than it's pretty joyous to be with our extraordinary everyman, Leopold Bloom, and we'll see just how winningly complex and engaging he is, right? Episode by episode.
How about the attempt to organize notes by topic and theme? I think that worked well.
Sure.
I mean, doesn't it facilitate a more, I don't know, at least a somewhat more fluid conversation? Like we can move through things more quickly.
Sure. I can give that a go for the next time. Try to organize a little bit more thematically or imagistically or whatever.
Okay. So what's next? Episode 5. Give us a preview.
It will be modeled after the Lotus Eaters episode in the Odyssey, right? So we will see all kinds of sort of images of lethargy and flowers and torpor and so on, right?
Okay.
The Lotus Eaters were the friendly hippie like people who
drug addicts.
fed Odysseus's soldiers the lotus. They ate of that and never wanted to go home, right? This ongoing theme of forgetting home, the temptations along the voyage, and so on. So we'll see the many forms that takes in the next installment.
The simplistic interpretation of that scene in the Odyssey offered by a high school English teacher of my acquaintance was, "Don't do drugs, kids."
Oh, yeah, Jesus. Well,
Brilliant.
Great state of Texas and its educational, public education system, where we are both the products.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. Well, this has been episode 4, the Cucklypso episode, as I call it. Calypso for the purists. And it was the first episode in the second section of the novel, the Odyssey, or the Ulysses section. And we'll be here a while. The focus is Leopold Bloom. We'll be focusing on him for the next 11 episodes. And
right.
So thanks to all book burners and Joyceans. We'll see you next time. Farewell.